What's going on YouTube? This is Ribo at the Bench, and today I have another cut or carry knife review. Today looking at something I've wanted to look at for a long time. This is the CRKT, or the Cricut Pilar, P-I-L-A-R, Pilar, I guess if it's a Hemingway reference, Pilar or something. But this is the smaller version of the Pilar, and should I say Pilar or Pilar? I'm going to say Pilar. So this is a smaller version of the Pilar. This is kind of an all-steel construction, very heavy knife. Really interesting design, very aggressive forward finger choil there. Really interesting overall. And a lot of people really like this knife. And I'm a sucker for Cricut designs. I typically don't love them in practice when I get my hand on them, and I think I have some videos backing that up. But the designs always really draw me in. I think the Cricut, what's it called? The Jettison. Is that one? There's one a couple years ago that came out that I really want to try out. But overall, I think that Cricut makes some very, very nice looking knives, and so I was able to get one of these and have been carrying it quite a bit, and wanted to share my thoughts. So let's do some measurements real quick. Let's do size comparison first. So the obvious size comparison, because of a lot of different reasons, is the Spyderco Dragonfly. You can see a lot of similarities in this knife. You can almost say that the Pilar here looks like the knockoff Dragonfly. You have a hole in the blade up here. You have about the same size blade, roughly the same cutting edge. You have finger choils on both. You have a very similar handle kind of design here, and very similar just overall in terms of size. Obviously, the Pilar is much thicker and we'll see much heavier. But that is definitely a size comparison. Let's do the Ontario Rat 2. So it's smaller, and we'll just throw out the Para 3 lightweight, obviously much smaller. All right, so let's do some weight measurements. Bring in the scale. So this is not a light knife at all. It's a very heavy knife, 4.2 ounces. And just for baseline, 1.1 ounce on the Dragonfly, 1.1, 1.2, something in there. It doesn't have the pocket clip, but you're looking at 4 times as heavy as a knife of similar size. So like I said, not a small knife. If I do a measurement of sharpened length of the blade, you're looking at right about 2 inches. Let's see if I can get full. Yeah, so you're looking at right around 6 inches total open length. And then in the pocket, we have 3.46, and thickness, you're looking at right under ½ an inch, which is not bad. But what is bad is the weight. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, so what do I like about this knife? For starters, I love the design. There's something about this design that I just really like. It's very simple. It has some very nice kind of angles and different geometry, especially with this blade, this kind of sheep's foot blade. You can see, mostly full flat grind, but you have kind of this nice cut here. Just overall very pleasing, I think, to the eye. Kind of monochromatic here with the all stainless steel construction. You have this kind of odd milling here, or whatever this is. I don't know what purpose it really serves. But overall, if nothing else, I think it's a very nice looking knife, and so I like that quite a bit. Other things that I like about this knife. Let's see. The cutting action is very good on this knife. I really like sheep's foot blades. I wish that I owned more of them. But for cutting tasks, specifically like scribing or that kind of task, this performs very, very well. It's a pretty good slicer. It's obviously a smaller blade, but it's very comfortable in the hand. I mean, compared to something like the Dragonfly, which I guess I'll do a head-to-head of these, although I think they're very, very different prices. but I would say it's almost more comfortable in my hands at least than the Dragonfly. And I think it's this deep finger choil here. It's there's no texturing or anything on here, but it's fairly deep, and so you do get a very, very nice grip on it. I do wish that there was some type of jimping up here or some kind of texturing because well, I'll get into that in a minute. But it's a very, very nice, very grippy, very intuitive knife that you know how to grab it and pick it up. I also really like the blade thickness. That's one thing that I did not measure. Let me do that in millimeters. So you're looking at 3.6 millimeters thick blade. Just for, again, baseline, the Dragonfly, so you're looking at over a millimeter thicker on such a small blade. You do have, this kind of forward swedge here, if that's what that's called. But you have it's almost like a cleaver style blade. And I actually really like that. It's kind of weird for such a small knife, but I do like that a lot. Other things I like, I can't believe I'm about to say this given my history, but I really like the fact that it's a frame lock. And I like that because these are just two hunks of steel. And so I have a lot more confidence. And I'll talk a little bit about things I dislike with the frame lock, but I do like the frame lock. I have a lot of confidence in it, and I think it works very well on a knife like this. I also really like this texturing right here. It's a little bit funky, it's a little bit weird, but it's not overdone. It's enough to get your finger in there. It's enough to kind of feel it and kind of give you something a little bit different to look for when you're not, looking at the knife. I mean, to feel for when you're not looking at the knife. Just to get in there and push that aside. I really like that. It's a little bit funky, but I think it's kind of cool. So I like that a decent bit. Let's see, what else? That might be it. Pocket clip I don't hate. You can only carry it tip up or tip down. You can't reverse the direction here. I don't, well, I'll get into that later. We're not talking about things I don't like. We're talking about things I do like. But the pocket clip is not bad at all. Especially compared to a lot of other budget pocket clips. I think that it's deep enough here. It's, obviously not coming down on any texturing, which is good. It gets in and out of the pocket fairly decently. It's a little bit stiff, a little bit tough to get in there, but overall, I think it's fairly good, especially for the price. All right, so let's see. I'll say this. Let me say this as a thing that I like merged into the things that I don't like. The hole in the blade here. So I like the hole in the blade to some extent, but I also think it's a little bit of a ripoff of a Spyderco, honestly. And I'm sure it's not. I'm sure there's plenty of reasons for it, but I mean, it's just very hard to ignore the similarities between these two knives. And if I do this, I can get a Spidey flick out of it. It's not super easy, although I cannot do it on the Dragonfly, so that says something at least. But I can open it that way. I'll say I can't really practically open this knife one-handed with that very easily. I have to kind of, hold my hand in this very weird way and push it out. It's not, whereas, with a hole like this, you have enough room to get a good bit of your thumb in there. With something like this, while it's a larger hole going kind of vertically, or if you're looking at it this way, it is not this way. And so you don't have a ton of room to get a thumb in there, especially because that hole comes right up against the handle right here. And so practically I end up just pulling the blade open like this. That works, that works totally fine for me. This is more for anytime I feel like I want to try to maneuver a Spidey flick out of it. But practically I don't ever find myself doing this because my hand is just way too big for that. So I don't love that. Let's see, what else? So I'll talk about this a little bit. So overall, I like the frame lock. However, and it's not totally surprising because it's kind of Cricut design or Cricut construction. It is a little bit sticky, and so I've had some situations where this is pushed in too much, and it's kind of been a pain to get that unstuck. Most of the time it works pretty well, but it hasn't really worn in like I would expect it to. It's not very smooth. I've never had a failure to lock up. I don't expect that I would have that, just looking at the knife and kind of looking at the construction. I don't really think that I'm going to have that issue. However, it does have a tendency to stick, and so that's not great. But again, considering the price, whatever. Things I don't love, so pocket clip can be reversed. There's this kind of cutout for the clip. You can see the threaded inserts right there, and you can see the cutout. Kind of sucks that like if you reverse the clip, you're stuck with this weird alien looking at you this whole time. It's just a little bit tacky. I would much prefer this to just sit flush, so that the pocket clip would sit proud, but this spot here would just be flush. I think that's a little bit tacky, kind of weird. Not a huge deal. It's just a visual thing, but there you go. This is kind of a thing I like and don't like. Don't really care enough about to have an opinion, but a little bit weird too. You have the screws here on the back spacer, and you just have, I don't know, it's like they're an afterthought, like they were put in after or something, but you can see that the handle comes out to accommodate them in both directions, which is just a little bit weird. You can see it right there where the screws kind of come out, and it does that in 4 different spots. Just weird considering the fact that, like, other than that, for what is, I don't know, a $30 knife, the finishing on this is very good. I mean, if you look at the blade, the grind, like, overall, it's not perfect. You can see I've kind of worn in the tip here. But it does look very nice for such a budget knife. I think overall they've done a pretty good job. Bead blasting is never my favorite thing, but I think it looks fine here. So that's just a weird detail that I noticed, right off the bat. There's other weird details like this texturing right here. I don't really get what it's for, but I kind of like it. It looks kind of cool. And then things I don't like, I mean, it's 8CR13 MOV, but I don't really, I don't expect a ton more, especially from Cricut and for a knife of this price. All right, so that is, I believe, about it. So final thoughts, cut or carry. This is going to be a carry for me, and I'm pretty surprised and excited because typically when I buy a CRKT knife, I love the look of it, and then I carry it, and I can't stand it, and I sell it. This one is a little bit different. Now, granted, this is not really going to be an everyday carry knife for me. I don't think it ever would be. There's part of me that really wants to check out the larger version of this knife, but I fear that it might be 14 ounces. This is a very heavy knife, and so I do carry it around the house. I do carry it a decent amount, but practically there are lighter weight options that give you pretty much the same thing this does. However, I am a sucker for blade shapes like this. I just absolutely love sheep's foot and kind of cleaver style blades, and I think everything about the way that this is done, especially with that forward finger choil, very, very comfortable in my hands, and that big kind of beefy blade. This guy just, I really, really like it. And so while it's not going to be an everyday carry option for me and probably never will, I do think it's going to stay in the collection for a long time. Maybe not forever, but I'm very surprised by this knife. I would say that this is probably my favorite CRKT knife that I've ever had after using it. So I'm not even going to run through the CRKTs that I've had, but I think this is definitely my favorite. And so well done. It is kind of typical construction, but since it's not a flipper, I think some of that action is a little bit hidden. Some of that kind of plastic washer action that you're used to is a little bit hidden by the fact that you're not fast opening this, and even if you do, you're kind of flicking it open and you don't really notice the action. But overall, well done. I really like this knife. I'm going to carry it for quite a bit, and who knows, maybe I'll check out the Big Brother at some point. Hope you have enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.